Welcome to Gilbert. It's all about the media podcast. Today, I am back with my good friend Jesus Vasquez. I guess say hi to everyone.
Hey everybody, how's it going?
Last time you were here, we talked about Star Wars and its 45-year journey. Now we have another series, and I believe it's 35 years, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's right.
1987, right?
That's exactly right.
All right. Today we are talking about a game series called Metal Gear. Those who don't know, well, Jesus, you're more the expert on these games. I think you should take it from here on this one.
Alrighty then. So for anybody who's been familiar with video games, there's been a lot of genres that have been out with platforming, a lot of first-person shooters, and all the other stuff. Well, at some point, Metal Gear is essentially the granddaddy of all the stealth genre of video games. For the most part, I think it's been going on for about 35 years now. But its latest game came out like in 2016. So that was pretty long. It's been a long while since there's been anything new from it. But for the most part, a lot of video game enthusiasts know exactly what I'm talking about. But for those who don't know, it's a video game franchise created by a video game auteur, Hideo Kojima, and he pretty much wanted to. Pretty much made a video game franchise influenced by all the movies that he grew up with. A lot of action films that, for sure, I know that Gilbert has been really interested in, and a lot of film buffs really know. But yeah, for him, Kojima pretty much wanted to turn video gaming into or introduce filmmaking techniques into video games. So he wanted to just break free from the normal video game norms that we tend to see, and for the most part, it's done extremely well, and it shows. But from what I understand, it's simply a stealth game starring Solid Snake, who essentially has to do a bunch of things to save the world from nuclear annihilation. And this is why the franchise is called Metal Gear, because it's a walking bipedal nuclear bomb. So that's the general synopsis of the franchise. I could go on forever, but but we all know how that's gonna go if I do that.
Yeah. I mean, it does have a lot of historical accuracies because there is kind of like a little Star Wars thing when it comes to the Metal Gear genre or the Metal Gear series, which we will get to. Obviously, the first or the last couple of games, they take place during the Cold War era. And it's not like something that's just like, it tells you it's in the Cold War era. No, there's events within these games that were actual events that happened during the Cold War era. So one of them, the recent game, involves when Russia was taking over Afghanistan, and as well as the Communist Party in Cuba, right?
For a small portion of it is actually in what Kojima wanted to essentially call it Guantanamo Bay.
Oh yeah.
Even though that we don't call it that in the game, it's essentially what that is in real life. But yeah, they do interact a bit with an American base on Cuban soil. So yeah, you can get a little bit of Cuban in there.
Yeah, but it's interesting because there is involves a lot of political stance, especially on where you stand on in any form of politics. Because we do have two protagonists. Actually, one of them is an antagonist in the first two games, which actually we find out in the future game, it's actually just one of the games. But if you ever played the games, you know what I mean. So you see their stance on like where politics lie, where pretty much who they stood for. And I guess there's a lot of that with, I haven't seen the gameplay for is it Sons of Liberty or what is it called?
So I guess if you're letting me know which one, is this the one where play a different character, but it's kind of set in New York?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. It's Sons of Liberty.
Yeah, I think that was the first one he ever told me about that. And I'm just all confused on what's happening in that game. But if you guys can get confusing a bit, I'll make things less confusing. I said earlier that there is a Star Wars-esque kind of a thing, and that's because Hideo Kojima, he did the first two games, obviously, and the second game does like a Star Wars incident because the main villain of the first two games is a guy named the Big Boss, and we'll encounter him a lot in future games. He doesn't really do like a Star Wars thing, but he says to Solid Snake that like he is his father, but it doesn't go like, I am your father. No, it's just more like
Yeah.
He just finds out. And unlike, Star Wars, they don't really have a father-son relationship because he kind of Big Boss kind of like loathes him as just a being, but appreciates him in future games. And if you're thinking, what more Star Wars can that get? the last couple of games are prequels to the first 4 games, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, because for some reason I thought Snake Eater was Metal Gear Solid 2, but it's actually Solid 3.
And I mean, I can tell you this: if you just want me to, I don't mean to interject or anything, but if you want, I could go ahead and give you a lowdown, I guess, a lowdown on the order of the sequence of the games.
Yeah, let them
But
know.
so, of course, when we're saying Snake Eater is the third in the franchise history in terms of just like with the number 3 on it, so it would confuse a lot of people. But it's actually the first in the entire timeline because that sets up all the events that we later see in the future games and so forth. But just like Star Wars, Hideo Kojima takes influence from those films and kind of makes games in between that either serve as sequels or like I guess if you want to call it Star Wars terms, an original trilogy. And then he'll make games that are prequels, just like the prequel trilogy, where the prequel trilogy kind of stuff, prequel games, it focuses on Big Boss as he's going up the ranks of becoming like known as the world's greatest mercenary. And then he takes a fall some down the line, and then the world hates him for it, and they want to go after him. And then after those games, you get some games where you have his son, the one he loads, because and the reason why he loads him is just simply because he's a clone of him. Without him knowing, they took some of his blood and genetic information and made sons, which they called Les Enfants Terribles, or the terrible children. So this is why he essentially turns his back on America and forms his own nation, which he calls Outer Heaven.
Yeah.
And then at some point in the first 2 games, so really you should be, it's like, to give you a rundown, it's Metal Gear Solid 3 in the timeline, because that takes place in 1964. And then it's Peace Walker, which would take place in 74. And it occurs in Costa Rica and little parts of Nicaragua and Guatemala.
I think that's where I got confused about the whole Cuban one.
Oh, yeah. But you're getting right, because the next in timeline wise, it goes into the Cuban mission, which is like Ground Zeroes. So that's kind of like it's still in the same place. It's a 1 year after Peace Walker, and then the events of the Phantom Pain, which is the current newest game. I guess you can't call that anymore, but the recent release of this whole franchise, it's just called Metal Gear Solid 5. This takes place in 1984, 10 years later, after 75, or after the Cuban events.
Yeah. So far, there has been still talks on a movie. Sonny that's been trying to make a movie. There's really nothing much except that all we can say, or because whoever's listening to this, we are on the same level of knowledge as y'all are. We don't know much about it, except that the director of Kong versus Godzilla is going to direct that movie, and Oscar Isaac is set to play Solid Snake. But if they continue to wait for long, he's going to end up playing Big Boss, which oddly enough, he looks like he can play both. Yeah. If I'm going to fan cast right now, and we might do this probably after the podcast or when we're ending it, I want to see Robert Patrick as the Big Boss. If you don't know who Robert Patrick is, you guys, I don't know, pick up the Terminator 2, man. It's
if you haven't done so, you are missing out.
I know. But if you don't know, Robert Patrick, he comes out in Terminator 2. He plays a lot of like bad guy roles. That's why we love him so much. And I can really see him, as the Big Boss. And he's pretty much a good age too. He's like in his early 60s. But supposedly there's a fan cast of Robin Wright, who played Jenny in Forrest Gump. And you guys are going to think that's weird, but if you ever look at Robin Wright's filmography after Forrest Gump, yeah, you'll be surprised. By the way, we came to this unprepared, so we're just going to be winging it the entire time. So let's just see how this goes. I'm going to take a break right now, and we'll see what we can do with this one.
I think we got enough time to kind of squeeze in as much as we can about the mainline series. We kind of gave everybody a rundown of Big Boss's timeline. I can go ahead and say a little bit about Solid Snakes, but however you want to do it, this is your podcast, of course.
All right, and welcome back to Gilbert. It's all about the media podcast. During our little break, we were just figuring out how to do a rundown of it. So we're going to give you the rundown of the first 2 games of Metal Gear, which came out, of course, in 87, and I think we said 90. I guess, Jesus, again, you're more the expert on these games as I am. So I guess give them the rundown as much as you can of the first 2 games.
Yeah, of course. So the first game, at least properly titled Metal Gear, It's supposed to take place in when I believe it's the early 1995 is when this game takes place. So it really is another 11 years or so after Metal Gear Solid 5, which would be the Phantom Pain. So with there's this big gap of 10 or 11 so years where the main protagonist of Metal Gear, Solid Snake, is actually being trained by Big Boss. And at this moment in time between that gap, Big Boss goes back to America and leads a group called Foxhound. And this is kind of like if you think about the Green Beret, it's kind of just like that, like a very special X Force unit from the US government. And he goes back to lead the group. And that's when he gives Solid Snake his mission to go and actually to destroy the final weapon Metal Gear in Outer Heaven. What the player doesn't know, and spoilers ahead, but this is a 35-year-old game at this point. Big Boss had already turned full villain for the world. So he's the leader, the secret leader of Outer Heaven. But that's not what the US knows. Anyways, he sends Solid Snake not to destroy Metal Gear, but to actually show that Outer Heaven is indestructible. He expects his son to literally die and not come back. What he doesn't know is that his son is his literal bloodline, like a carbon copy. So his son is going through all these things. He's defeating Big Boss's greatest soldiers in all the mess that he's in. He's rescuing, his mission basically is to rescue his friend, but also former soldier or partner, Gray Fox, and, well, destroy Metal Gear. And he does those things exactly. By the end of the game, as soon as you destroy Metal Gear, there's a countdown, I guess, assumes that there was a nuclear strike that's about to bomb Outer Heaven or just be destroyed completely. So as you're running to find an escape, you finally meet Big Boss. So naturally, you go into a fight, and boom, 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 you win, you kill him, and you escape Outer Heaven before it explodes. And that's basically the end of the first game. However, because Kojima loves his filmmaking, he makes a post-credit scene. And it's Big Boss saying, "I ain't dead yet, Snake. Sooner or later, we will meet again." So that's the event of the first game. And then we go 5 years later, around 1999, to Metal Gear 2, Solid Snake. So the world believes that Big Boss is dead. But now the leader in Foxhound is Colonel Campbell. He's recognizable, may not be recognizable now, but he starts to become a major character as the future sequels go on. But he's now his new commander. And fun fact, Kojima based Colonel Campbell off of Richard Crenna's Colonel from the Rambo series. So there's a lot of things taken to that, but again, that's his inspiration of filmmaking and putting them into games. The original model of Solid Snake, of course, was actually modeled after Mel Gibson, and then Big Boss's model was actually inspired by Sean Connery. So it's kind of funny. But anyway, enough of that aside. With the events of the second game taking place, there's this new military mercenary force called, I'm trying to remember, I don't know what they're actually called again, but I know that there's this new place in Zanzibar land. And from what I believe, this group essentially kidnaps a scientist who creates an amoeba eating machine that eats oil. And essentially, because of that little amoeba, it's going to eat all the oil supply. You have Saudi Arabia, you have Russia, you have all these countries making oil and making a lot of money out of it for the economy. Well, if Zanzibar land has this little bacteria that the scientists made, they can essentially rule the world with all the oil they can make. Anyway, that aside, they have their own Metal Gear, and that's a threat for the world as it is. So the US, once again, sends Snake to find out who are these perpetrators and to recover that bacteria. Well, he goes, he does his thing, he goes through the same idea. Zanzibar has a whole new bunch of militiamen that he's able to take out with ease. He meets a person named Holly, and she's actually not a PMC, but she's also a secret agent, but disguised as a journalist. And I only mention her because you're going to see later on a bit why. So she helps you find out the information, helps you find out the scientist and where he's located and such. So once you do all that, Snake is able to find a scientist, retrieve the bacteria, Unfortunately, the scientist is dead at this point, but he's able to retrieve the little piece that they were looking for. And then, special twist, the person manning Metal Gear is none other than his friend, Frank Yeager, or known as Gray Fox. So, you tell us, if Gray Fox was rescued at the beginning of the first game, now he's your enemy in this one. Turns out throughout the game, you start realizing that Big Boss is alive because all the people that you fight, he's going to come after you, and we're going to make sure that his dream of unifying a nation of soldiers is complete. So at the end, you actually fight against Gray Fox. This is where Gray Fox meets his untimely death, or so we think. You destroy Gear, and once again, you finally encounter Big Boss. Now, you're asking yourself, how did he encounter Big Boss a second time if literally you killed him and then you blew up an entire military base in the first game? Well, as it turns out, in Metal Gear Solid 5, you find out that the Big Boss you end up, because, Metal Gear Solid 5, you're playing Big Boss, right? But it turns out you're not even playing him. You're playing a body double who was made to look through plastic surgery and a whole bunch of other cognitive therapy to be Big Boss, or unless we call him Big Boss's Phantom. So the person you end up killing in Metal Gear 1 as Solid Snake is actually his Phantom, not the real Big Boss. And that's why you see him again in the second game, and that's when you finally have your big face-off. You kill him, but not before he tells Snake that he is his father.
Yeah, I mean, I guess when we played the last game, which we will get to in a bit, because it's actually a real. By the way, guys, that's the only game I've ever actually truly played. The rest of the stuff I've seen through, what are they called, playthroughs? I think on YouTube, where somebody will edit the whole game into the story. I mean, which looks like to me like an anime film. Yeah, a computer generated anime film. Actually, before we close out this segment and go on to the next, before we go into break, have you ever actually, when we had the voices for the next couple of games, which we will get into, have you ever actually heard the Japanese version of these games or played them?
So for the most part, I have yet to actually do a complete playthrough with the Japanese voice cast. I think that can be based on the fact that not all the games have the option for you to play in Japanese. I think Metal Gear, for example, Metal Gear Solid 1, we'll talk about after the break. I think you can only play in English, as I don't think it has a Japanese version that you can see with subtitles. But for most of the other mainline games, like the newest ones, I think you can play in Japanese and still get the full experience in that way. But yeah, I have yet to fully play a game like that.
Yeah. All right. We are back to Gilbert. It's all about the media podcast. Yeah, we covered the first two Metal Gear games. And those weren't really, well, if you would expect from a game that came out in the late 80s and 90s, they're kind of like the old arcade games. If you've ever seen any of the old, like Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat. But these next couple of games actually, it does play out a lot more like a movie because it even has voice actors, and recurring one obviously is David Hayter.
David Hayter,
Hayter, yeah. Which he plays Snake for the rest of the games, as well as, was it the first two prequel games as well? Before?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, it was 3 and Peace Walker.
Yeah, because after that, if anyone's ever seen Lost Boys or 24, Kiefer Sutherland eventually takes over the role of the Big Boss. So if you guys love Lost Boys and 24, and if you're a big Kiefer Sutherland fan, yeah, he comes out in these games and he does a real good job as playing the Big Boss. Anyway, to catch up on more of I would say the next two games, because they both feature the brother Liquid, right? Yeah, and also I think one of our favorite, at least my favorite character, Ocelot.
It's a fan favorite.
Yeah, he'll explain a lot more. And when I saw the game through this one, they give you a lot more character development within these games, especially one character you are going to mention, I know, is Psycho Mantis, because you feel bad for him during the games. And it's a common thing, by the way, we forgot to mention this, that any Snake, either Solid or the Big Boss, will go up against a bunch of people as like a challenge. And yeah, I guess you want to take it away for the next two games?
Sure. So I can't. Well, without I must apologize for saying this, but I didn't really give an overview over the prequel games, even though that just with the fact that we're kind of like close on the time and stuff like that. But I'll try to fill in those plot points and as they actually intertwine with the new game. So with Metal Gear Solid 1, this is now taking place in the year 2005. So just add another 5 years or so from the events of Metal Gear 2. Snake is simply retired from all of this stuff. He went ahead and defeated Metal Gear twice and defeated a big boss, and coincidentally twice. So at this point, he was ready to go to Alaska, retire, and pretty much be a Alaskan dog rider, a sled rider. So from that point, once again, Colonel Campbell, his former boss, actually asks him to come back and serve under the military or the U.S. as a secret agent to undergo in coincidentally happening in his new home in the Arctic in a place called Shadow Moses. So Shadow Moses is actually being led by what used to be his former unit, Foxhound. So now Foxhound used to be a service of the US government, now is becoming a terrorist organization, being led by none other than Snake's brother, Liquid Snake.
Dun
Now,
dun
Liquid.
dun. Sorry, I wanted to do that, but yeah, it's okay. Go on. Sorry, I just wanted to do that. It was just fun to do, but you
No, that
continue.
is funny. That is
Yeah.
hilarious. So, to just add on to the point, I'm gonna go backtrack a little bit here. Liquid Snake was one of the three sons that were made in the Les Enfants Terribles project, who actually makes an appearance in Metal Gear Solid 5, where you were playing Big Boss or Big Boss's Phantom. He's a little boy in that game. He's about 14 years or so, and you can tell from the moment of the get go, he absolutely hates his dad. It's almost like he wished he wasn't made, but he had no choice because it wasn't his choice to begin with. Liquid Snake basically loathes his father because he believed that he received his father's recessive genes, which makes him the inferior son of the three sons of Big Boss. He believes that Solid Snake actually received the dominant genes, making him superior over him. So he had this childhood. He's had this hatred for his father and Solid, and coincidentally, he's the leader of the terrorist group, and he's also has Revolver Ocelot, which another thing, Revolver Ocelot, he is almost in every single game and has been here since the very beginning with Big Boss. So he acts a lot like the double agent, triple agent at times, but you'll see what I mean as we go along. Him and three other people. They're well-known militiamen, so Sniper Wolf, Vulcan Raven, Decoy Octopus, and of course, everyone's favorite mind reader, Psycho Mantis. So all these characters combined make up that terrorist group, and all they demand is the body of Big Boss for reasons that we'll get to in a bit. But that's the idea. They have a new weapon, a Metal Gear, in this case Metal Gear Rex, that they intend to blow up, or in this case, they intend to release a nuclear weapon if they don't receive his body. So this is why the US government enlists Snake to go and, well, infiltrate and destroy it. Along the way, he ends up meeting the scientist behind the Metal Gear named Hal. And Hal has a long history with the franchise as well, albeit his dad. His dad is the one who develops the weapon in the first place. And, well, we'll say that Hal has a pretty tragic a family history as it goes into that. But, Snake meets Hal. He discovers, or when Hal discovers his weapon is being used for the wrong reasons, he gets upset because he knows that's exactly how his dad went into that path, and he refuses to even work with the terrorists at this point because he didn't even know they were terrorists to begin with. But he wants to go and help Snake. Throughout the rest of the game, he supplies you with hints about the actual facility and where you should go. And also along the way, you'll end up encountering, like I said, if you remember a little bit about Metal Gear 2, at that point, Snake had met someone named Holly, who was a secret agent and helping him throughout the game in Zanzibar land. Well, now that we're talking Shadow Moses, you meet a girl named Meryl. So Meryl is essentially Holly. It's weird. When you start noticing the stuff I told you, Metal Gear Solid 1 almost acts like a remake to Metal Gear 2. Because you have certain characters here, you have a scientist, you have a Metal Gear, you have a girl that basically becomes your partner throughout the game. So it kind of goes into, but it has different things anyway. Try to keep it simple here. Eventually, you defeat the Metal Gear. You defeat all the enemies: Sniper Wolf, Vulcan Raven, Mantis, and Decoy Octopus, along with Rover Ocelot. There's one character I forgot to mention though. If you remember, the last time I said Snake's former friend, Gray Fox, was found to be dead at Zanzibar Land. Well, in this case, he's actually turned, if you wouldn't so mind Gilbert has to tell us, he is now Gray Fox. Dun dun dun. Gray Fox is a cyborg ninja.
Yeah, it actually sounds pretty cool if you actually play the game, but it's not like Samurai Cop or anything. But
yeah, but yeah, he's basically, as we said, a cybernetic ninja who actually kind of helps Snake throughout the game. At one point, it's funny. I don't know why he calls himself this, but it's made a lot of laughs throughout the community. He says, "Just call me Deep Throat." And everybody kind of knows what kind of connotations it takes nowadays. But still, that's just the idea. He secretly didn't want to tell Snake who he was until he finally revealed himself to him. And so now that he's got Gray Fox with him and he's got a lot of people behind his back, he goes ahead, he's able to take down Metal Gear Rex, and then he finally has his showdown with his brother. His brother reveals a lot of things to him about why he's doing this in the first place, which goes back to the genes and how he feels like he's inferior. But he makes the mistake that he's actually, like, Liquid in reality is the superior brother. And Solid Snake is the one who has the inferior genes. But of course, he never knows that until, actually, he never knows. He just dies believing that he's inferior. At the end of the game, he ends up dying to not through a bullet, not through strangleholds, or not through a fist fight. He dies from being close to Snake, and I guess you want to call it being infected with a virus that Snake himself had no idea he had until later on in the game, and that being called Fox Dye. Fox Dye was implanted in him at the beginning of the game by a scientist named Naomi Hunter. In the middle of the game, when you find out about all of this and what she has done to you, and her reasoning behind it is because, another kind of twist, she was the adopted sister of Gray Fox. And so when she discovered that Snake had killed her brother, she of course wanted vengeance for his death. She was able to discover that they were using his body and turning him into a ninja. Albeit he was basically close to death, but they were keeping him alive for like research purposes. So of course she ends up freeing him, and that's why he's out to go, in his ninja mode and all this other stuff. But she thinks that injecting Snake with Fox Dye, he ends up dying. At least that was her intention. Because throughout the game, the people you rescue end up dying in front of Snake. And it's all because of the infection of Fox Dye that he himself had no idea he was carrying. In the end, he talks to Naomi, and Naomi tells him, with his sincerest apologies, that she finally realizes the mistake she made because she had no idea that her brother was in fact alive. At least after the whole ninja thing, simply tells him to live out his life. Because if Liquid died in front of him, Snake had no idea how much time he had left himself. And then the game ends with you and Merle going out like in the sunset, like how all the westerns always end.
Yeah, that's very touching. And diseases and poison does make it's used a lot in these games, especially one which we'll get to in a later segment. All right, welcome back to Gilbert's All About the Media podcast. Like we just said, there are prequel games to this game series, which I bet you I've never ever heard of before. And to save you some time, we are going to be cruising through them. but we're also going to try not to leave out a lot of detail as well. So yeah, it's going to be challenging here. But we've mentioned that these series, it goes, you basically see Big Boss's story within these next couple of games. You don't really get everything all in one game. Like it all doesn't just happen quickly. The only thing I can tell you is that what really happens is how, because if you ever seen the games, Big Boss loses an eye, and that's pretty much the first thing you'll see. But the first game takes place, I wouldn't say the height of the Cold War, but it's taking place in the early times of the Cold War. Yeah, I guess you could take it from here, Zeus. I mean, this is the one game I've actually had a lot more fascination with, even though I haven't played it, but I've seen the playthrough a lot more.
Yeah, of course. Metal Gear Solid 3 pretty much is the forerunner of all the franchise. It all begins and starts off, and it gives us the origins of Big Boss. So Big Boss basically here, you can just imagine him who he is in the 60s. He's pretty much the spitting image of his son. He hasn't even earned the title of Big Boss yet. His own code name is simply Snake or Naked Snake. He is essentially led to rescue a scientist who, and by the way, there is no mention of Metal Gear in this game, even though it has the title. But since it's a prequel, it's acceptable here. He's rescuing a scientist, Russian scientist, of course, who's developed a weapon called the Shagohod. And it's kind of like Metal Gear. Instead of being bipedal, it's more like a vehicle, like a transport. But it still carries the same capabilities as a Metal Gear with nukes and missiles and such. So his mission is to go rescue this scientist because he is defecting, because he wants to make sure that his family is protected. Well, the thing is that you have your support team, and your support unit consists of your boss or your Major Zero, a paramedic, SIGINT, and to a lesser degree, the Big Boss's mentor, the boss. So think of it this way. Big Boss is not Big Boss in this game. He is Snake. He is still a rookie. He's still a soldier by the U.S. government. The boss is his teacher. She is the one who is known as the greatest mercenary in the world. You rescue the scientist, and before you're ready to head out, you are intercepted by the boss. And the boss is actually telling you, as a twist, that she is defecting to the Soviet Union. Of course, Snake is really upset, has no idea what's happening. And to kind of put it into perspective as to why she's the greatest mercenary, she has her own unit called the Cobra Unit. This Cobra Unit and herself are the ones who, remember, because this is historical fiction, but it kind of plays into historical events. They're the ones who apparently led the Battle of Normandy, which helped win World War II for the Allies. So it's kind of funny how you put it into it like that. But anyway, that aside, she defects to the Soviet Union with superpower, or the Russian superpower dude named Volgin. This series has a lot of supernatural events, a lot of supernatural abilities. First of all, you have Mantis who can read minds. Come on. Volgin actually has the power to release thunder out of his hands for some reason. So it's like he's like the Human Torch, but full of electricity. So anyway, he wants to recover what's called the Philosopher's Legacy. This is think of it as a massive cache of funds. And with that money, he can essentially create his own army, rebel against his own nation, and take over the world. Anyway, and he plans to do this with the Shagohod. So he takes the boss, leaves Naked Snake to die. And, well, Snake, knowing these series of revelations, is now being ordered by his boss, Zero, to eliminate his teacher. So he has to go back to Soviet Russia, destroy the Shagohod, just like all the games, and ultimately kill. So I just kind of want to add in a little bit about the final confrontation. So when you finally meet up with the boss gives her whole dream of uniting the world, her whole dream of world peace, basically. She wants the world to be left as it is. She don't want no war. She wants none of this or anything like that. After giving her dream to her son, because even though it is a student, she always sees him as an adoptive son. Always has seen him like that. Which, spoiler alert, she actually did bear a child. That is over Ocelot. The thing is, Ocelot, I don't think he ever knows that the boss is his son. I mean, her son. But anyway, she goes ahead. You have your fight with her. she's pretty skilled too. Like you're gonna have to learn not to shoot with a gun. You have to do what both of them developed, what's called CQC or close quarters combat. So most of the time it's you just actually deflecting bullets, but also making sure that you don't get shot in the process and take her down. In the end, you're given the choice. She gives you one last little speech as she's dying, or she knows that this is her last moments. She tells them that the world only needs one big boss and one snake. Yeah. And it's so cool because for Kojima, for him to put this into a game, it's not a cutscene that lets you shoot the boss where we see Snake kill her. We, the player, need to pull the trigger. So it's just crazy how for the longest time you grew up with the character development because you actually are playing Snake. You feel like you're Snake, and you have this person that he's looked up to for all of his life, basically. And now you have to be the one to end her life.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Long story short, she ends up dying. You, along with somebody that I forgot, but it's okay. We'll talk about her later.
You're talking about, what was her name again?
Her code name is Eva.
Eva. Yeah. Yeah, we could talk about her later, but let's just say she's someone who is, I guess, a double agent, supposedly?
Yeah.
She's a double agent. She's actually working for the People's Republic of China, or the Chinese Communist Party. And what was it? She was supposed to steal the plans for the Shagahad, right?
She was actually supposed to steal the plans for the actual sum of the Philosopher's Legacy, that cash that I mentioned that Vogan wanted to take at the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. By the way, Vogan kind of dies weak in this game, but he's not dead forever, as you can pretty much know. We do run into Ocelot here. He's very young because he's an old guy when we first meet him in the first games. And by the way, I mentioned, he did lose his eye, and that scene, I guess I'll tell you because Jesus has a lot more knowledge than I do, but I've only seen a couple of the prequels. But there is a scene where like he's juggling a bunch of guns, and it just gets so intense.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, and he is being captured. By the way, Snake is captured, and due to some incident, he accidentally gets shot in the eye. Snake is shot in the eye, and he gets a slap from his mama. So I'm supposedly. Yeah, I remember you actually telling me about that. And then I actually went to go see it for myself. But yeah.
One of these days, we literally need to get together, Summer, and watch the entire saga. There's a saga, like literally, there's a guy who, like you said, like the playthroughs online of these games. He managed to put all of the major cutscenes of all the games. And I'm even including the arcade versions, like the first two Metal Gears, into one cohesive story. It's like almost 12 hours long.
Dang. Yeah. And then I guess we could eventually go. There is another game after that called Portable Ops, but it's not directed by Hideo Kojima as all the others are, from what you've told me. Do you actually know who directed that one?
From what I understand, isn't him, but it's supposed to be... Okay, I don't really know his name, but from what I know, is that he was a major player in the company or the production that made these games, because it's Kojima Productions. But he's like the guy, second in command to Kojima.
Yeah, and I don't remember too much about the game, but the Metal Gear is kind of weird, though. It's kind of like, I think that's the first time I've seen him flying Metal Gear, though they don't even call it a Metal Gear in that one either.
No, they actually call it the Shagahad. It's the same scientist that you rescued in the third game, Snake rescues in the third game, and he gets captured again. He doesn't make it out in this one, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But he is forced to rebuild the Shagahad.
Yeah. And it's actually its own government, right? Wasn't it a U.S. general that was controlling everything?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not surprising because this is what, the 70s?
Yeah. It's 70s, all right.
This is when we actually do start getting a lot of enemy of the states within that time. It's interesting because like the previous game, Ocelot just disappears and we don't see him again. And then think of it like watching a Marvel movie and you have to wait till the very end to see a credit scene. That's what it is with Portable Ops. You eventually find out what Ocelot's been up to. I forgot what it is. Do you remember?
He's come to retrieve the last piece of the Philosopher's Legacy. So the last piece of funds, of money.
Yeah. Yeah. We don't hear from him again until Metal Gear Solid 5, and he's played by a different actor. I doubt you guys are familiar with Troy Baker, but if you are, that is the voice of Ocelot. And it's funny because, like, it's kind of funny in a way because Ocelot in Metal Gear Solid 1, and then the Troy Baker version, he sounds kind of southern, like a Western man. But then he sounds British in the first. Well, not really British. It's just more like he sounds proper.
Right. It's like gruffer, like a gruffier voice.
Yeah. Like I said, like we don't really know 100% if they're Russian, but the complexion just makes us assume. I guess whoever plays Ocelot, that's gonna be a judgment call for them there. I guess I do want to quickly jump into Snake Eaters a bit. That's actually the first time we kind of get a little bit of LGBT representation, if I'm not mistaken, because the main antagonist is someone who was in love with the boss, if I can remember. We were just talking earlier, and I remember a long time ago that there was supposedly like LGBT representation, this game. And you mentioned it was the scientist who was a female scientist, actually, who was in love with the boss, Snake's mentor. Yeah. And he said that.
So pretty much, she's the one who develops the new Metal Gear in this game. And funny enough, it's the same as the title itself, Peace Walker.
Oh,
she develops basically the Metal Gear's central AI, and the AI is the boss. Pretty much, it's almost like she resurrected her, but through this AI. And the reason for that is because Strangelove, the scientist, she was madly in love with the boss. Now, whether or not they knew each other and they loved each other, because she would always refer to herself as the boss's lover. Or she was in love with the icon, the boss, and just what her history has shown, and somehow it mesmerizes her. It's not explicitly stated in the games as to which one of those two I just mentioned is the right way of making her the boss's lover.
Yeah, but especially back then in the 60s and 70s. Oh, I just looked into this as we had a little mishap earlier, guys, but during our mishap, I found out this. I just saw it takes place in 74, which is actually the time of gay rising, but in America. And anywhere else in the world, you would still be outcasted for being homosexual. And most of you guys know mine's and Jesus' stance on homosexuality, but we still see gay people as human beings. We've always had. There's nothing about that. But despite where our views are, even if the boss would have been, lesbian, I'm pretty sure she deeply would have had to hid that, because if you were a homosexual in Russia, again, we're assuming she probably is Russian, or again, was probably living in Russia. If you're an outed homosexual in Russia, be in the gulags, and you wouldn't even last even a month. Yeah, again, these games give you a lot of history, and then you just go back and you do all your research. And as he said earlier, the game goes back or it takes us to Costa Rica, and we meet
So if I can interject, just to kind of bring it into scale, this is there's a 10-year gap between the events of Snake Eater and Peace Walker. Yes, of course, Port of Ops is in there like in 1970, but it's not really that major as it's not directed by Kojima, so it can still fall into the canon in some way, but it's not that important. What does happen in those 10 years, though, that's important is the fact that at some point, Big Boss betrays his country of America. He just basically just says, I'm done with you because of the creation. Because of that, he finds out the Lace and Fonz Talib project, that Eva herself became the surrogate mother of the children. So that's why she's like the most, that's very important for her as a character in the franchise, because she's essentially Liquid and Solid Snake's mother. But anyway, put it into perspective of the new game in 74. You, Big Boss, are now a leader of a small militia known as MSF, and it's also being led by your second in command, but also friend, Kazuhira Miller. And both of them essentially are given a small little task by this. He's actually KGB agent from Russia who's being disguised as a professor of a university. I think it's called the La Universidad de Paz, somewhere in Bolivia, I believe. I could be completely wrong, but it's somewhere in South America. And he has a student, a protege named Paz Ortega Andrade. I confused that. My bad. It's just Paz Ortega. And surprisingly enough, she is the one who convinces Snake to go ahead and try to stop Peace Walker from actually causing nuclear annihilation. Because her shtick is that she's a child of peace. She wants peace in the world. She doesn't want to see any kind of nuclear bombs or wars occurring. So that's what they do, and they go through their stuff. And you were gonna say something?
I was gonna say her brother, right? That's her brother, Chico, or was it just someone she knew?
No, that's somebody that she knew. You're confusing Chico's older sister named Amanda.
Yeah. I was gonna say because you run into them, and Chico is kind of like a child soldier there, and yeah. By the way, child soldiers, it's a common thing even back then. I didn't think it was actually common in Central America, though. Yeah. But you do run into them in the Metal Gear Solid 5. Yeah, I guess we can continue I guess whatever you had left of Peace Walker.
Sure. I'm just trying to cut all the fat and giving you the big meat, nitty gritty. You are obviously led throughout Costa Rica to find Peace Walker and find out who's leading it. You find out Strangelove's in charge of it. You end up meeting Hal's father, who is named Huey, and he's also the developer of Peace Walker and all the other roaming mechs happening around. Because it's not just one Metal Gear; it's a whole bunch of other Metal Gears in between. Some of these are either bipedal, or some of these are just ones who are just like the Shagohod, more like a vehicle kind of thing that moves or drives. Anyway, when you defeat all these four things and you finally get to Peace Walker, the whole time throughout the game, you can tell that Big Boss is really frustrated with this. He doesn't understand why the boss or the AI boss is the one who's going to cause nuclear annihilation or World War III, when her whole mission or her whole belief is to have peace in the world. Anyway, once he's able to take down Peace Walker, the funny thing is Peace Walker is almost indestructible. It's about to, no matter what he does, even if he takes out the central AI network and just shuts down the AI, somehow has a failsafe, and it's about to go ahead and it's about to actually launch something into the United States, in which the U.S. government feels like it's going to, because they know about the history between Cuba and a bunch of other stuff, they think it's a Russian airstrike. And so then the U.S. is going to send a missile straight to Russia, and Russia, not knowing that the U.S. is about to send a missile they're going to send missiles back and forth, and we get World War III. But anyway, for some reason, this Peace Walker takes control of itself, and it refuses to launch a nuke. Instead, it forces itself to dive into the Caribbean Sea. And that's it. At this moment, Strangelove finally understands what the boss meant in terms of her dream of peace. She put down her gun. She no longer wanted to deal with all that stuff. She just wanted peace. Big Boss takes this the wrong way, though. Because he believed that the boss would never put her gun down and would always be a defender of her nation, this little incident shows him that the boss has betrayed herself of who she is. So he no longer accepts the boss's idea. Well, he wants to take her idea, but he takes it the wrong way. Whereas the boss wants the world to be left the way it is and let the world become a philanthropist kind of idea, he thinks the boss wants the world to unite under one total nation of military. So his ideas start coming together, and he wants to create outer heaven. He believes this is what the boss's will means.
And like I said earlier, the prequels, they give you stories of how Big Boss becomes what he is little by little. So yeah, not everything is going to be piled up into one game. So like I said, the only thing you'll know is that he just loses his eye in the first prequel. And, like, I wouldn't say it's obsession with a Metal Gear, but, has his first sight of it or his first experience with it. And now you guys are kind of seeing what he becomes. By the way, I think this is something Lucas could have done, but yeah, I'm
He
always
just
gonna
needed better writers. He just
yeah.
needed somebody else to write and him to direct. That's all he needed.
Well, then again, if you actually think about it, and I know we're going off topic, but if you think about it, Anakin actually did saw the Jedi as evil or hypocrites, which is now where the boss has seen with America.
Yes.
By the way, this one is a lot kind of a comedy-ish Peace Walker, especially like two things. One, I love the gameplay. I love that it looks like a comic book. It's yeah, it's actually really cool. And it's funny because and then this does happen in the next game. You put a little backpack on someone and then a hot air balloon just shoots up and it just swoops them like 300 feet in the oh my gosh, that's like the one thing I always laugh at.
And the funny thing about it, just to add, and also to bring it back to like the media and how the movies work, it's so crazy. You would think that's not a real thing that the military uses, but it really is.
Yeah.
It has its own name, Fulton Recovery System. And if you don't know what we're talking about, I'm sure you've seen The Dark Knight. The Dark Knight, if you remember,
Yeah, I forgot about that.
When Batman is about to take, he escapes from at the moment, but when he's in China and he's about to take this gentleman who's working with the Maroonies in Gotham, you see the exact same little parachute, and they both fly out back into his plane.
And you know what's funny? I'm actually gonna go back to that one. Like, I remember telling you about this. Is that the boss can have like a little bit of theology as the Joker because all it takes is one bad day for you to like, not even be evil. It's just like
you go down a certain path that you don't follow, that you don't want to follow, but because of this one bad day.
Yeah, I mean, people can assume the bad day is when her baby was taken from her, but I feel like there was something else that could be greater than that we don't know about, which is kind of interesting. We were talking about like Paz and Chico, and they appear briefly in the next game. And the next game isn't really, think of it like an intro game for the next game. That's pretty much what it is. And it's kind of messed up too, because the story is the big boss, has to retrieve Paz and Chico. What's the guy's name again?
So the main villain of this next game is simply called Skullface.
Yeah, Skullface. And yeah, his face actually looks like that. Like think of Lon Chaney from the Phantom of the Opera. Like that's what his face is. And I forgot why he kidnapped him though. It's been a while since I played.
I'll let you know because I was going to get into the last ending of Peace Walker because there's two endings. The one that we talked about Peace Walker just drowning itself in the sea and Big Boss finally turning his back on America. But the other ending was that Huey, or Hal's dad, creates the first bipedal Metal Gear, the one that stands on two legs. So officially now he creates the first Metal Gear in this franchise. And it's under your control as Snake or as Big Boss. But it find out that Ramon Galvez is of course against you and is a KGB agent. He escapes at some points and you have to find him multiple times. But once you finally, on his last time, he attempts to escape your base, it's revealed that him and Paz were secretly working to infiltrate and steal Metal Gear. So Paz steals Metal Gear from you. This reveals to Snake that she's actually working for this organization called Cypher, otherwise known as the Patriots, which is being led by Snake's former commander, Zero. Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah.
But it's crazy. She pretty much tells him, you have an ultimatum. You either give up your little base and military and give in to Cypher. Otherwise, we're going to take you out and squish you like a bug.
Yeah.
So you know exactly what Snake chooses. You destroy Metal Gear, the thing you created, and Paz lands into the ocean, which he then gets picked up by a fisherman, which leads into the events of this next game.
Yeah. And of course, the next game is he has to retrieve them. Are we introduced to, I forgot his name, sunglasses, blonde?
You mean Miller?
Yeah. Is that the first time we're...
So Miller is actually first introduced in Peace Walker.
Oh, okay.
It's the same guy.
Yeah. By the way, Miller is like think of it like somebody you're kind of forced to work with. You have one motive, they have the other. They don't agree with you. That's how pretty much Miller is.
Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, you could like he doesn't trust anybody. I mean, when they picked up Paz, I mean, he's just like slapping her around, calling her the B word, like where are the plans and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And by the way, if you guys are very squeamish,
Let me just
there,
say, the first time, if I can add, the first time I invited y'all to my house to see this game in the playthrough, I still remember how gruesome it was.
yeah, y'all don't know. Cypher was it
Yeah.
Cypher? Cypher
No, wait,
planted
I'm
a
sorry. It's not. My apologies. Skullface at this point actually was working for Cypher, but went against the company he's working for. He's doing his own thing.
okay. So anyway, Skullface had I'm just gonna say the Skullface had a bunch of guys plant a bomb in pause. And so you have to, by the way, you don't have to do this. You're not the player, but you're watching this, like, I mean, they're undoing the stitches and they're having to remove the bomb before it detonates. Unbeknownst to everyone else, there's a second bomb in a place you shouldn't put a second bomb inside a woman, or in
Yeah.
this case, what, a 14-year-old girl?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And sadly, Chico doesn't survive that, right?
No, unfortunately he doesn't.
Yeah. And it's even messed up part is that Chico lost the ability to walk. So if anyone very pays attention in anatomy, there's like special tendons and all that in your ankles that helps you walk. They bolted that, so he's no longer able to walk. Yeah, so now he's dead and he got no legs. So, and then obviously that's where we get. And by the way, it's called Ground Zero. That's the game, but I call it Metal Gear Solid 5 Part 1 because, again, that's like an intro. So the next game is pretty much the rest of the Metal Gear Solid series, where we are introduced to, as Jesus said, a phantom, but the whole time we think that it's actually the big boss. And you kind of forget about it, or, well, I forgot what I was going to say. In the beginning, you wake up and you have plastic surgery, and then you don't really see it until the very end of the game. And it all kind of makes sense. Because when you play, you're like, why is it that he has plastic surgery and yet he looks like, the big boss? And then it gets into further explanation, which is actually pretty cool of a twist. And I kind of skipped the part, but when the bomb detonates, Big Boss's helicopter crashes in some European country. Did they ever mention it?
So it's weird. We'll give you the rundown. Long story short, Skullface infiltrates your base, destroys everything that the player, you, built in Peace Walker. Because remember, you're building your own militia. So
Yeah.
you hire soldiers, blah blah blah. You start building your whole thing. It really sucks because when you play the game, you play Peace Walker, you did all that hard work, and it gets destroyed in Ground Zeroes. So it really
Oh, I
upsets me
forgot
when that
about that.
happens.
Yeah.
But long story short, yes,
Yeah.
Skullface destroys your base,
Yeah.
kills
Yeah.
you, or almost kills you. Your helicopter, or Big Boss's helicopter, essentially falls into the ocean somewhere. It's not in Europe, by the way.
Oh, it's
It's
not?
still in the South American Sea because that's where the
Oh.
base is at. But he somehow gets sent to Europe.
Oh, okay.
But yes, he goes into a coma, and then 10 years pass. So
Yeah,
from
10 years.
75 to 1984. I think that's 9 years, but
9 years,
you know
yeah.
what I mean. And he wakes up from his 9-year coma.
Yeah. And it freaks him out. They sedated him like how many times?
Oh, I'm gonna say like 2 times at least, or 3.
They're gonna be messed up. Like you wake up, you find out you've been in a coma for 9 years, and they sedate you so many times. But I mean, and then again, how else are you gonna react?
Yeah, and then your arm was cut off in the middle of that.
Oh yeah. And
That's
then
amputated.
yeah, what was it? Is it Skullface's militia that attacks the hospital?
Yes.
Yeah, so Skullface's militia attacks the hospital. You're being led by a guy wrapped in bandages, and as soon as you make it out alive, you hijack a jeep. It crashes. You don't know where the guy who helped you is at, but then you are rescued by dun 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 Ocelot, again played by Troy Baker, awesomely. And I think actually, if y'all look at Troy Baker and you look at the Ocelot in the games, very similar by a lot.
Yes. And I love the voice.
Yeah. Also, it's kind of weird though. It's like it's Ocelot. You remember me? And and there's like, yeah, like because they didn't really end on good terms when it came to Snake Eater. But I mean, unless something happened between those years, they never mentioned. But now you're introduced to a whole bunch of new missions, and as I mentioned earlier, viruses and poison works a lot in these games. And the one thing, by the way, this is the longest segment I had to do. Anyway, there is a virus in there that removes the English language. And if you ever speak English, it starts killing you and killing you because, and I guess you can kind of feel for the antagonist here. He was, his language that he originally spoke was stripped away from him. And I understand. I mean, that's what happened to the Native Americans. Their language was stripped from them when Europeans settled in their land. So I understand that. And then you're introduced to a character named Quiet, who lives up to her name. By the way, she doesn't speak because we find out that she also has the virus too. Actually, speaking of Native Americans, there is a Native American in the game, right?
Yes, let me just say the diversity that he decided to bring into this prequel trilogy, into the prequels, with first representing LGBTQ and now giving us, I mean, he's already given us Native American people from like Metal Gear Solid 1, but still,
Yeah.
just the fact that he brought this one character in here who developed this virus and all that other stuff is just, I really like it. I enjoyed that part.
Yeah, you do like Quiet. And when you're first introduced to her, you have a choice either to kill her or to spare her, but you have to sedate her. Easiest way, I'm gonna tell you guys, easiest way to sedate her in that, because it's hard to fight against her when you first meet her because she is a sharpshooter and she can disappear. I cannot explain that.
That's a special part of having a parasite in you. So
Okay. Oh yeah, because there are others that replicate. Why I forgot about that. But easiest way to sedate her without having to use the dark gun is they make these bombs that like bomb sleep gas. So all you gotta do is just figure out where she is, like pinpoint where Quiet is at, and then that's where you mark the bombs, and then that's where you can sedate her from there.
yeah.
I did that. And it took me like 10 seconds just to do that level. And like I said, Miller has his own ways of doing things. So he never trusted Quiet at all. I mean, because Big Boss thought she could be useful. So he brings her to the base where they are located at. Miller's like, no, don't bring her here. Don't bring her here. She is not stepping foot on this base. I mean, I wouldn't blame him. I mean, she's a sharpshooter. She's somebody who kind of works for the enemy. Yeah, but Ocelot's like, I think we can trust her. But then, of course, we also had a conversation where even the boss is like, I know there's going to be a time where I'm going to have to kill her, and I'm ready for that. I think my favorite side character throughout the whole series,
and
and
it's
the
also
dog.
and it's also sad about why she is like that, because there was a controversy going around with her, being really, I guess, what's the right term, bare naked.
Oh yeah,
Because I mean, she of course covered all the parts that were private, but everything else, it's almost like she was just out in the open. And there's a reason for that, because in the beginning of that game, when Big Boss wakes up from his coma, there's a person who's out to kill you, and that is her.
oh
And at some point, that guy with the bandages that we were talking about,
yeah,
who's supposed to protect you, actually burns her alive.
oh wow,
So when Skullface retrieves her, she's essentially scarred to death in terms of burn and all that stuff. So to save her life, he implants that virus in her. But as a consequence of it, Parasite is photosynthetic. So that means it only feeds off of energy from the sun. And that's the reason why she has to not be clothed, because she doesn't breathe normally. Her skin does the breathing.
yeah. By the way, you guys, the Metal Gear in this game is actually pretty cool.
Oh, yeah.
It is. Oh man, I'm a bit iffy to be honest with you because I don't know why you would show a Metal Gear that awesome when it's supposed to be, a prequel trilogy. Because now, to me, it just makes the other Metal Gears after that just like, okay.
I tell you a good reason as to why they did this. First of all, it was almost like the last game that Kojima was making. So I understand why he wanted to end off on a really big note and give us like the biggest Metal Gear on a record and the tallest one at that. But at the same time, it's how in science, how there's that thing about, oh, if man came from apes and all this other stuff,
Yeah,
and
because
how
For those who don't know, the Metal Gear here is called Sahelanthropus, which is the link between evolution.
Yes. So according to to science, Sahelanthropus, or the name behind this missing link, is that it bridges both humans and all other primates. So funny enough, this game serves as the missing link between the prequels and the first couple of games.
So it's like he's been trying to replicate Sahelanthropus since the beginning.
Right. And I
Okay.
mean, Otacon's dad, saying Hal's dad, the one who developed the machine, pretty much gives up on all of his Metal Gear stuff after this. He doesn't make any more Metal Gears. He still works with the government for a bit, but it's really more like Hal, his son, is trying to avoid turning into what his dad is or what his dad becomes in the prequels.
Yeah.
So I can see why they chose not to even make Sahelanthropus for like the future. But we can always talk about this day and night. But yeah.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I was gonna say earlier, other than Quiet Dog, it's kind of a good sidekick too.
Oh, D-Dog, yes.
D-Dog, yeah. And yeah, this is the game where we actually do meet Liquid Snake as a kid. He's like 12 years old.
Yeah.
Like, and a younger Psycho Mantis, though he doesn't really speak in this one as he did in the early games.
Turns out he's Russian.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I didn't know about that, but yeah, his name's supposed to be Treji Rebanok. I am mispronouncing that really badly, but yeah, it's in Russian. It means third child.
Yeah. And this one, Liquid Snake, he does lead a bunch of child rebels, child soldiers, and it's tough for Snake not to want to kill any of them. But he was able to sedate Liquid Snake, and of course, he's just Liquid Snake as a child is just being out of control on base, and then just out of nowhere, he just randomly leaves with Psycho Mantis, and he just says goodbye, father. But like I said, eventually we do find out that the person he's talking to isn't really his father. And I guess we'll just skip to the end here. But the guy who we mentioned in the beginning, who's wrapped in bandages, is actually Snake himself, the big boss, and he's helping out his Phantom. And that whole thing about the whole, plastic surgery or whatever, that's actually the Phantom being transformed into the big boss. So when you're making the character, because you actually are making the character's features when they're doing the plastic surgery, it's actually that's how he originally looked like. So you're making his original form while they're showing you now what you're going to look like for the rest of your life. I mean, and it's cool though, because like he says, for here on out, you're big boss, and the Phantom smiles in the mirror and just smashes it. It's really cool.
I want to add something to it because I really love that ending sequence, twist ending. You realize that you haven't been playing Big Boss all this time.
Yeah.
You've only been playing just a guy, a soldier of his, who's accepted to become Big Boss's Phantom. But in that same couple of seconds, when he smiles in the mirror and he closes that tape of the man who sold the world, he flips it around, and it's almost like a time skip happens.
Yeah.
Where it comes from 1984 all the way until 1995, where the events of Metal Gear take place, almost to where it's like it's the last couple of minutes for this Phantom to just think about how far he's come, and now his life is about to be eliminated by Solid Snake.
Yeah. Before I go on a break, we did forget to mention though that Logan actually survives Metal Gear Solid 3. We didn't really say he dies, but he gets electrocuted, and we thought, oh, he's dead. Nope, he comes back as a fire demon. You just really have to put him in water.
And then you just extinguish him. Really simple, really easy.
Yeah, pretty much. I think that's the first time though, because when Logan just shoots up out of nowhere, that's the first time I've ever heard the F-bomb dropped in a Metal Gear game. Like they're like, what the F is that? I was like, oh dang.
I don't ever remember that scene, to be honest.
No, yeah, they dropped it, and I think they said it again when Ocelot was training some of the militia. Yeah, and by the way, his militia kind of dies because of the virus, because of that. Yeah, and the worst part is you have to kill, these people who are begging for their lives. But if you don't kill them, then the rest of the base is gonna, it's gonna get that virus. And I guess because we did get like I said, I loved Quiet as a side character, And it's sad because the boss, y'all are not seeing this, but I'm quoting it. I'm air quoting it. The boss or the Phantom gets injured. And of course, Quiet cannot speak English. She's trying to like communicate with that Chopper saying, the boss is here, but she can't speak English. So she is forced to say where the boss is. Like she's giving them longitude and latitude. You don't hear from her after that. We're just assuming she probably died, or because I don't know how much English what does it take for the virus to kill you.
I think the first word she utters is like a ticking time bomb after that.
Yeah, it gets you on an emotional level, and this is the longest one to be honest with you, because there is a lot of side quests, and then there's a lot of quests that just brings into the storyline of again, dun dun dun. It wasn't the boss after all.
Yeah.
By the way, the funny thing, and I'll end it from there, and then we'll go on to the next segment, and it will be our final segment of the Metal Gear games. I know we said we go quick, but it wasn't as quick as I thought it'd be. But it's cool that like when the boss actually leaves, he's just on his motorcycle, lighting his cigar with that look like an electric lighter. Yeah, dude. And again, that is Kiefer Sutherland. They don't have his representation because of what was it, fan service? Like they don't want
Obvious reasons. We don't.
Yeah.
We know who Big Boss is. The face is too iconic to be looking like Kiefer Sutherland.
Yeah. Yeah, I know we kind of went all over the place, but like I said, we didn't really have like an outline ready. We're either working or we at school, so forgive us for that. Yeah. All right, welcome back to Gilbert. It's all about the media podcast. Believe it or not, I think this is so far the longest podcast I've ever had to work on, and my ass is really numb right now. I mean, I've been sitting down for a long time. Yeah, we are actually in our last segment of the Metal Gear game. A little side note, actually, a long time ago, Jesus and a couple of other our friends actually made a Metal Gear short film for Spanish class. So,
Oh yeah.
and then I have a video. It's actually still on there. I just added a bunch of Big Boss videos. Yeah, it's still on there. You could just literally look up. I think it's called the Big Boss Tribute or something like that.
Where is it? Because I don't remember seeing it.
Okay, so I have two YouTube channels. I don't remember why. I think because I try to do a contest and there's always like that. You can only have like one per entry. So I made two email addresses. That way I could cheat the system. And then,
Yeah.
you know what? I don't want too much videos on one YouTube channel. So I'm just going to put some on a different YouTube channel, which is where I put my comedy stuff at. My Big Boss video is on my first YouTube channel. Yeah, we're at the last second of our games, which is Guns of Patriot and Sons of Liberty, which is, the last games. You will see the biggest monologue ever. Again, it seems like you've led the whole way, so I guess you can end us from here on the last two games.
Alrighty. So since we already talked about the prequels of Big Boss and his rise and fall from the moment he was a rookie soldier, was trained by one of the greatest soldiers ever, and then leads his own nation, his own military, and becomes an enemy of the state or enemy of the entire world. So going back now we're going to the story of Solid Snake. We're going to end these two games become the conclusion of Solid Snake's story. Metal Gear Solid 2 is the sequel to Metal Gear Solid 1. So if you recall back to when we were talking about Snake and how he was in the Arctic in Shadow Moses doing his thing and finally confronting his brother, Liquid. After those events, we scroll into 2007, where Snake and Otacon, or HAL, now together as a team, they formed their own philanthropy kind of unit. Excuse me. Their mission is to simply let the world know about Metal Gears and to dismantle them, however way they see fit. They work for nobody, so the U.S., Russia, whatever. They work for no one but for themselves. And it's funny because they're the ones who actually indirectly fulfill the boss's wish of letting the world be the way it is and having peace. But the funny thing is, they have no idea who the boss is. So they just indirectly do all this. Anyway, with the event of this game taking place in New York, Snake and Otacon find out about a tanker led by the U.S. Marines who have their own new Metal Gear called Metal Gear Ray. It looks kind of like an amphibious kind of reptile kind of unit. It doesn't look like Rex's. It's got a laser coming out of its mouth. and it works in water, so it's amphibious. Anyway, they're told to go and take pictures of it because they're going to leak this information out to the internet, so the world knows that the U.S. Marines have their own Metal Gear and blah blah blah. As it turns out, the Russians also want to get in on this, so the Russians undoubtedly also invade the ship, and they're all being led by Sergei Golukovich, who actually has Revolver Ocelot with him. So it's weird. You see Ocelot in the very beginning, young and Metal Gear and Snake Eater. He's with Russia's side. Then he somehow leaves Russia, joins Big Boss for a while, and then leaves Big Boss again, and now he's with Russia. So this guy doesn't know which side to pick. He's his own dude. Anyway, him and the Russians intercept the Marines, and before you know it, that's when Ocelot reveals that he's actually working for neither Russia nor America. He's not working with Russia. He's working for Cypher or the Patriots. Or in this case, at this point, everyone knows them as the Lalilulelo. Anyway, he kills Gurlukovich, almost wipes out his entire Russian fleet, and in turn takes Metal Gear for himself, and almost leaves Snake to die as well. So, and there's a weird thing too about it, because I forgot to mention in the first game, where you see him as an old gentleman, he pretty much turns into, from what I understand here, is Ocelot pretty much takes Metal Gear, but is gonna go and give it to the Patriots because he's working for them. Leaves Snake to almost die, and going back to Metal Gear Solid 1, his arm gets chopped off by Gray Fox. You know, since he's a ninja and all, he's got a sword. He chops off his arm. And the funny thing is, his arm replacement is none other than, Liquid Snake's arm. So for some reason, he starts getting possessed by the ghost of Liquid, where at one point you can tell when the arm of his new arm starts twitching. It's like if like a Jekyll and Hyde thing. He starts turning into Liquid Snake. He still looks like Ocelot, but then his whole tone, his attitude, and even voice changes for a bit, and it's literally Liquid. And so at some point, Liquid takes over his mind and takes the Metal Gear with him. Anyway, the tank is destroyed. Everyone believes Snake is dead. Time passes 2 years in 2009. And this is where the big events take place of this game. For some reason, Kojima wanted to change it all up, give us another twist. Just like with Big Boss, we're not playing Big Boss in Metal Gear Solid 5, we're playing his Phantom. Here, we're not playing Snake anymore. We're playing a new dude named Raiden. He apparently it was because he wanted to appeal to females, since he figured out that there was a lot more males playing games. And he did a survey where a lot of Japanese women were saying, I would like to play like young, handsome boys and not old men. So I guess he went for it. He said if he's going to appeal to them, he'll make a character like that. Hence Raiden. Anyway, Raiden is young. He's the new person to take over this mission. You're led to believe that Colonel, remember, the Colonel, that was Snake's former boss, is the one leading Raiden into this mission. And his new mission is to rescue the U.S. president from a terrorist organization.
Again.
Sounds familiar, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, this new organization is being led by the third son of the Les Enfants Terribles project. We talked about Solid, we talked about Liquid, and now we talk about the third. His name is Solidus Snake. He looks like the spitting image of Big Boss. Old and with an eye patch, because his eye also gets shot. So he looks almost like Big Boss in every way. Anyway, he's the leader, and he's also with Ocelot. Ocelot's a part of the Patriots, if you know. But he's doing it all in disguise, because Solid Snake, all he wants to do is wipe out the Patriots. He wants to wipe out the Lalilulelo because he knows that they are about to censor practically technology as we know it. He knows that they have a major AI system that is going to wipe out him out of the history books. Practically, he won't be remembered, pretty much. And he doesn't want that. He wants to be remembered by people. That's why he leads this whole terrorist thing and is essentially forcing the U.S. government or the Patriots to give up. Of course, We, the players, don't know this until the end. We're duped. We're led to believe that we're doing a good thing when we're not, and that's what it usually lies. I always feel bad for Solidus because he
Mhm.
didn't want to do any of this. He didn't want to cause any terrorist threat. He didn't want to annihilate or assassinate the president or nothing. He just wanted to be remembered. But unfortunately, that doesn't happen. We have to kill him as Raiden. We have to eliminate him, and we do so. At the end of the game, Snake actually, throughout the game, Snake appears, but he's disguised as a Navy SEALs military official named Iroquois Pliskin, kind of like Snake Plissken from a certain movie, Escape from New York.
Mhm.
But anyway, yeah, he's disguised as this person, and players know who he is. Raiden has no idea. Next thing you know, we know who he is, and he helps you take down Solidus and the new Metal Gear. So those are the events of Metal Gear Solid 2 in a nutshell. I left out a lot of other characters, but based on time, it's totally all right. And anything you want to add to that?
No, not so much. Just like I said, there's a big important monologue when it comes to the last Metal Gear, or not the last Metal Gear game, but the last to like continue the storyline of Solid Snake himself. It is Guns of no, not Guns of Patriots.
No, you're right. It is.
So it is Guns of Patriots. The final thing.
It is the final scene, like the
Yeah.
really.
How did I did have to ask? How did the boss come back?
So Big Boss came back over the fact that, so you know how his body was burned in Metal Gear 2, and what ended up happening was, because if you remember, Liquid and Solidus are basically clones. Solidus is almost like a perfect clone of him in his face and his physical features. So when Liquid and Solidus, his bodies are recovered by the Patriots, they actually go ahead and reconstruct his face. Kind of like in real life, how a lot of burn victims go through facial implants or skin implants. It's kind of the same thing. It's a weird thing. It's something that it's possible to do, but for him to look exactly like an old Big Boss without all the scars and everything, obviously it hasn't been done yet. But
yeah.
It's explained that his body is reconstructed back through the bodies of Liquid and Solidus.
Yeah, if y'all know, it's basically like the ending is basically they're in the cemetery. Is it Arlington or is it just a
it's
different?
Arlington.
Yeah, they're in Arlington, and the boss, we remind you that she was an enemy of the state, is buried in Arlington Cemetery. I mean, he talks about like the day he killed her, and I like it because like he salutes to the grave one last time. And by the way, this is the moment where he's actually dying, like he's dying in this moment, and he does make amends with Snake, but not as father and son, as soldier to soldier, because in that scene he says, "I never saw you as a son, but I respected you as a soldier and as a man."
As a man.
Yeah. When you were said about facial reconstruction, burnt victim, Darth Vader, anyone?
Right?
Yeah. I mean, again, I don't think Kojima was 100% trying to do it like Star Wars, but it just happened just happens to be like that. But yeah, I mean, it is a interesting series, and game through is actually very fun. And like I said, it looks like was I recording this when I said it? It's like watching an animated movie. I don't remember. I'll look back into it. Okay. So yeah, it's just like that. And I mean, obviously the game stations have evolved over the years. So I don't know if you've heard if they're trying to re-release the games or not.
So from what I understand is there's no plan right now in re-releasing games for the new series of consoles, but there's rumors going on that Sony, and this is far from theory, so don't far from a rumor. So take this with a grain of salt. Sony is apparently trying to buy out Konami's, because this is under Konami property, trying to buy out Metal Gear Solid franchise and the Silent Hill franchise.
Oh wow!
Because they know they have a stake with Kojima. Kojima works with Sony a lot, and they work with Death Stranding because they help make Death Stranding together. Sony, the rumor is that at this year's or this year or something like that, or December, they're going to announce they now have control over these two properties, and the idea is to make more games. Now, If that's true or not, we don't know. We'll have to see. But I think for the most part, there hasn't been any news about them re-releasing things. But who knows?
I
Maybe
mean,
for this third,
I was gonna say they re-released the Lego Star Wars. I mean, who
right?
knows what could happen? Yeah, but there is another game, everyone. But it's called what? Rising Revengeance or
It's called
something.
Metal Gear Rising Revengeance. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about that one.
Don't have to worry about it. It's really just a bunch of shenanigans, but it stars Raiden. So
Oh,
people
really?
know, yeah, people who know Raiden in Metal Gear Solid 2, people who enjoyed playing him get to replay him again. But this time he's a ninja. And
Oh,
spoiler alert, he's a ninja in the fourth game, in Guns of the
oh,
Patriot.
yeah,
He turns into Gray Fox, pretty much.
yeah. I know we've had my fan cast, but who would you like to see as like the big boss? I know I said Robert Patrick in the beginning.
Well, if anything, I'll be honest with you. If they're getting Oscar Isaac to play Solid Snake, then they should just stick to the way the games are and just make him big boss as well.
Mm. I
I
mean,
mean,
yeah,
they're gonna have to do some makeup and all that other stuff, but
like I said, he pretty much can look like the big boss too. But yeah, I don't really know what. Like I said, from when we're recording this now, and by the way, how long it takes me to edit this stuff, I'm pretty sure we're still not going to get a lot of information by the time this comes out. We'll probably still have the same information as soon as this comes out, which is probably over the summer. So I don't expect too big of an announcement within the coming months. I guess until the full like Sunny dealship, I guess.
Mhm.
Yeah. But I guess anything else you want to add on?
yes, if anything, I also want to mention when we're talking about fan casting, like you said, like Gilbert mentioned a long time ago, at the beginning, Robin Wright, who plays Jenny in Forrest Gump, she has a huge filmography line. She's been in a lot of movies. The last time I've seen her was in Wonder Woman, and I'll tell you what, if you look at her, and compare her to how the boss looks like, there's nobody else that I want to see play the boss except her.
Oh, yeah.
There's no one else that I want to see, just her. She
What
has
about
it.
yeah? Yeah, she does have the characteristics. What about Ocelot?
Ocelot is pretty interesting. If they try to get Troy Baker,
Yeah,
I don't mind seeing Troy Baker again. But if they don't get him, and I want to go for somebody more famous, this is a weird stretch. But I think Timothy Oliphant would actually play a really good Ocelot.
yeah.
After seeing The
Oh,
Mandalorian and The Book of
yeah,
Boba Fett, I can totally see him play him.
yeah. Actually, yeah, that does look like a good casting choice. I think I'll go with Timothy Oliphant.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'll go with him too. Because like I'm trying to think of any in the back of my mind, but everybody I'm thinking of is either old or dead, like Sean Connery or Sam
Or Lee
Neill
Van Cleave.
or Sam Elliott.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, maybe if Metal Gear had came out years earlier, I'm thinking Sam Elliott would have actually been a good Ocelot because they kind of look similar.
Yeah, that's right.
But I mean, you don't want to imagine Ocelot sounding like this, like the Sam Elliott voice. But yeah, I mean, it's a yeah, guys. We covered a lot, and it is a lot because these games act like movies, and we said the last one acts more like a series, especially because you do have a lot of side quests as a normal video game would. I feel like no other game will really give you that big of like an emotion as these games are, especially like I said with the last scene when the big boss dies, especially when his last lines are "This is good, isn't it?"
I'm gonna tell you
And
what, I don't know what it is, but the first time I played that game, and seeing the confrontation between the two and their final moments together, I don't know it. I ain't afraid to admit that I was crying. Not too serious or anything, but still, that was really emotional.
yeah, I mean that death scene kind of reminds me of like the Logan death scene, even though I saw Big Boss's death scene before Logan, but I mean they kind of have like a similar like saying of dying.
Shoot, the whole game is like really similar to Logan. I mean, you have Snake who is old at this point. He looks like an old man, and he's done with this, but he still has to go through it. He's got one last score to settle, just
Yeah,
like Logan.
yeah, yeah. I mean it's a good game. I mean if because I know look, I'm gonna be honest with you. I know someone out there has to have every freaking game console known to man. I know somebody like you
Yes,
is
sir,
out
he does.
there. So if you're that person who has pretty much every game console or every PlayStation, I mean, my brother-in-law, I think we gave him a PlayStation 2 for Christmas like 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. I know that's kind of funny, but yeah, I mean, I don't know where you would buy old video game. I'm pretty sure, like, because I know San Antonio has one video game store that has vintage games. So, I mean, if you're anywhere near a place that sells vintage games, pick up these games.
They're worth your time.
Yeah,
It's literally worth your time to actually buy a console with it. To this day, I still have my until they announced that they're bringing them into like the PS4, the PS5. I am keeping my PS3.
yeah,
I'm not giving that up.
yeah. Though I don't know were what kind of controller you need for the first two games because how retro they are. But I'm assuming the Sony Entertainment System.
You
If I,
actually need, if you want to play the original two games, you have two ways of doing it. And the second way is easy, but the first one is hard. You would need the only system that was, I guess, available in Europe and Japan. It never came in the US. It's called the MSX2,
Mhm.
and it's like a little keyboard. And yeah, you hook it up to a TV and boom, you get the game. But that's the hard way of doing it. The easy way, the second way, it's actually available on the PS3.
Oh, really?
If you buy the Metal Gear Solid Legacy Collection, which comes with almost the entire games except for 5 because this is released before the 5th game, or the HD Collection, which comes with Metal Gear Solid 3. If you have Metal Gear Solid 3 in HD, Metal Gear Solid 3 comes with the first two original games.
All right, y'all heard it from himself. if if you're looking up have that version of the game, then hopefully y'all can get the first two games. But yeah, I mean that's all the time we have. I think this is the longest podcast I've ever recorded, and I'm assuming there is many more to come. But anyway, Jesus, thank you for coming back to the show, man. It's wonderful to have you here.
Hey, thanks for letting me stick out this whole time, man. I didn't mean this podcast to turn into like almost 3 hours long.
Actually, it's at 2:57, but I think by the time I edit this down, it's gonna be like probably no 1:58 now. But well, it doesn't matter. It'll be chopped up by at least a minute 40. But anyway, yeah, thank you for coming out today, and yeah, I can't wait to see what more products. I mean, what more topics we would have to talk about. But anyway, guys, thank you for listening. I'm pretty sure y'all could be listening to this on a very long trip by now. Yeah, this has been the It's All About the Media podcast. You guys have a good night, good day, whenever, wherever you're listening to this. But yeah, thank you for listening, and y'all have a wonderful time.
Hey, thank you so much. Have a great one.
Yep.